like organic, regenerative, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. Nika, we're live. We're recording right now, but we're going to talk about Chinese medicine. That's my
Okay.
hope. We're going to talk
Okay.
about organic. We're going to talk
Yeah.
about regenerative if we can. That'd be great.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about you holistically as a
Okay.
human being who is a CEO and mom.
Not
Um,
CEO, sorry. Just founder. I used to be the CEO, but I now have a CEO. So I'm the founder.
our founder. Yeah, yeah. See,
Yeah.
that means nothing to anybody but you. No one knows the difference
No.
between a CEO and a founder. I don't know the difference. As far as
Well,
I'm
we can talk
concerned,
about that if you want to.
no, we're not doing a lesson on business.
Yeah.
You're a CEO whether you like it or not. Seriously, if
Okay.
something goes wrong at the business, you're getting fucked.
That's true. That is true.
Nika Pasquale, it's such a joy to have you here on the Zaddy Zone. You're my friend. We've hung out a couple of times now. I just wanted to get a little introduction. Tell us who you are.
Yeah. And I have to start with I told my son this morning that I'm doing your podcast, and basically, I might as well be on Oprah. He was like, "Oh my God, can I stay home from school? I can't believe it." Like, he was super excited. He loves
I,
you.
lo- I love that. I
Um,
love that.
yeah. So I am the founder of Urban Remedy, and my background is in Chinese medicine. So I'm a licensed acupuncturist and herbalist and
Hmm.
practice Chinese medicine. I had a private practice for about 11 years. And after that, which is kind of how I got into the food as medicine piece and how I started Urban Remedy, and then I decided to go full force into Urban Remedy. So I'm still licensed, but I'm
Okay.
focused more on the food is healing and healing people on the planet through food, and don't have a private practice right now.
Yeah. So the whole food is medicine thing, is that controversial? People say that food isn't medicine. Are there people who say that?
Yes, there are people that say that.
Oh.
I think it's also I think it's two things. I think that it has become a little bit of a buzzword. So I think there's so many brands out there that are saying, "Oh, food is medicine," and so I think it's a little bit trendy. I have seen, in my practice, somebody with a chronic illness. I could give an example. Like I was treating somebody who had lupus, and I said, let's get you on this anti-inflammatory diet and get rid of, all the inflammatory foods. And, I was putting her on this specific diet. She went back to her primary care physician. And then I saw her the next time and she said, I asked my doctor about going on this diet, and he said there's absolutely zero scientific evidence or proof that diet has any effect on your condition. And so I think that, I think it's changing a little bit. I think in the Western medicine schooling, there's very little training on health and nutrition, as you know. And
Yes.
so, but I think people are becoming more conscious of it and really connecting the dots. There's a bunch of doctors who, talk about it and whatnot. So I think it's changing, but I do think that it's not standard of care when it comes to treating chronic illness.
Yeah, that's shocking. I mean, it's shocking to me to hear that. They call Alzheimer's
Type 2
diabetes
diabetes.
type
Yeah.
3
Oh,
diabetes. I think
type
they
3.
call
Yeah.
Alzheimer's now
Yeah.
because of how diet related it is, but because of how insulin related it is. So,
Yes.
I mean, I just I don't see it being controversial that food is medicine. I mean, unless you make medicine and you don't want people to think that medicine is cheap or something, I just don't see how it's a controversial topic.
Yeah. I just did a podcast with Dr. Robert Lustig, and I asked him that question, and his response is, look at our medical system. The pharmaceutical companies fund medical schools. And so
Mm.
they have an interest in what is being taught in medical schools, which is using pharmaceutical drugs. And there's no money to be made on somebody changing their diet. And so it's really, it's one of the things that hopefully in time will change in our medical systems.
And also dietitians, we hear about dietitian schools and nutritionist schools are funded by big food. So
Oh,
Nestle
yeah.
funds dietitian schools. So it's like, who do we trust?
Yes.
And it's essentially the person you choose to trust is somebody who should not be profiting off whatever they're giving you to do. So if
Yeah.
they can give you a diet plan that
Yeah.
doesn't profit them, then you should probably listen to that person.
Yeah. And yes, no disrespect to dietitians, but I can't tell you how many meetings I've been in with other food companies we were going to do something with. And they were like, well, our dietitian wants to come in and, ask you some questions. And, there's one time we were talking to somebody about our bars, and they're high in fat, but they have like cacao butter and coconut oil and
Hmm.
flaxseed. And she was like, well, I'm really worried that, somebody's going to get a heart attack, or somebody's going to sue us because of the high saturated fat, in these bars. And they're super low glycemic. They have like 5 grams of sugar and like 10 grams of protein.
Yep.
And so I think that's where a lot of dietitians come from. It's a very simplistic view of a calorie as a calorie, and not really looking at the micro and macros and how those work together,
Mm.
especially when it relates to inflammation and things like that. And so it's always, when somebody is a registered dietitian, I'm always curious, like what other training they've had, and I think there's some great dietitians out there, but what you said is correct about the training.
Mm. Yeah, no doubt there are great dietitians out there. They also ignore the culture. They don't know the history of how
Mhm.
fat was vilified by the sugar industry in order
Yes.
to get people to eat more grains and sugar. Like an actual history about, Kellogg and Colgate teaming up to vilify saturated fat and cholesterol and say that's the bad guy. And if you're not aware of that history, then I'm not sure you're quite ready to comment on whether fat is bad for you.
Yes. Yes. And it's still, and you know what? That story is still going on in some of the medical circles. I mean, there's still doctors that are going to tell you, that you should eat canola oil and you should eat, seed oils, which we know are super inflammatory.
Yes, I mean this is an interesting. I'm happy to dive in right here. This is really fun. So the thing with me and seed oils is that I understand there are very scientific, evidence-based people. I put that in inverted commas, who are just obsessed with the science. And if the science isn't there, then there's no evidence that,
Yeah.
for instance, seed oils. A lot of people say that seed oils aren't bad for you. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, well then what's wrong with McDonald's fries?
Oh, yeah.
What's wrong with McDonald's fries? If that's what you think, if seed oils aren't bad for you, then what's wrong with McDonald's fries? And I'd like to see in your kitchen, how often are you cooking these people? How often are they cooking with safflower, rapeseed? How often are they cooking with soy and corn oil? I'm fascinated to know. And it
Well,
just
I think
seems
there's a
short
lot of
sighted.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have gone into people's kitchens and seen canola oil or safflower oil or vegetable oil, and I'm always shocked. I just can't. I'm like, should I say anything or should I not? And there are people that still, one, it's cheaper. And so for some
Yes.
people that are really worried about budget and not really thinking about their health as much, it's much cheaper than a great olive oil. And so I think there's that piece. And then, other people, it's like that's what their mom used or
Yeah.
whatever, and they're still doing it. Or Pam, I went into somebody's, I'm not going to tell you whose kitchen it was, but I went into somebody who you might know, who I thought was very health conscious, and she had Pam spray. And I
Ah.
could not believe it. And so, anyways, I think it's very common. I think people like us are very aware of it, but I think there's a lot of people who still don't have that connection.
Yeah, and I think that if somebody's out there and they have Pam in their you know uh, whatever they've got it in their kitchen, there's nothing. Here's the thing: the evidence doesn't state that it's absolutely terrible for you. The evidence just states that it's highly processed, which it is, and that it doesn't have any real nutritive value. But furthermore, the evidence is backed by people. The evidence that's in place right now is backed by huge food companies. Every huge food company in
Yeah.
the world, McDonald's, KFC, these Pizza Hut, all these companies that profit massively off
Yeah.
using cheap oil are the people behind these studies that are saying it's absolutely okay to eat. I'd prefer to err on the side of, and that's what I say to everybody out there. I'd err on the side of caution and not eat it. If you're an evidence-based person who needs all the science, I'd err on the side of caution by not taking it, because I think history will show in the end that it is inflammatory and it is terrible for you, which is what I believe right now. But if you're not sure, I'd just err on the side of caution and just not eat it.
Yeah, but I think history does show. I think if you look at, when we started, moving to monocrops and using seed oils,
Mm.
it made food cheaper, and it was, around the same time we started using GMOs for corn, soy, wheat, and etc. Those two things, and in that same time period, we started using more glyphosate and things like that.
Yes.
And you look at a graph and you look at the rate, like when my mom was young, she said nobody ever, like, having a heart attack or cancer was a rare thing. And now
Hmm.
it's extremely common. If you hear that somebody has cancer or has an issue with their heart, you're like, oh, it's really not that shocking, right? And if
No,
you look
yeah.
at the graph of how chronic disease has increased compared to our farming practices
Hmm.
related to what I just said, there's a correlation there. And people have done that, and I've seen the graph, and it's very interesting. But you're right. I mean, everybody, it's a free world, and people should be able to eat what they want. And but understanding these kinds of things usually can help people make an informed choice.
Yeah, and I think that's a multifaceted. I've seen that graph. It's like chronic disease goes up like crazy the minute that this huge agriculture and big food comes into it. Use of seed oils, for instance, the famous case is McDonald's. They used to use beef tallow
Yeah.
in their fries, and then they switched to canola, or they switched these cheap seed oils. And I don't think it's just seed oils. It's probably like a lack of nutrients in food, a
Yeah.
higher amount of processed food, which is more moreish, more easily overeaten, and
Mhm.
less nutritious, and
Mhm.
therefore leads to obesity and leads to all of these other issues down the line. And so I think it's multifaceted, but you
Yeah.
can see a graph of use of seed oils, which is aligned with chronic disease going up.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about Chinese medicine because I'm absolutely fascinated.
Yeah.
I hung out with you a couple of weeks ago, and you had us stick out our tongues and looked at our tongues, and I just thought this is so fascinating and something I'd never thought about. So tell me about the tongue and how it is kind of a roadmap for what may be going on inside.
Yeah, well, there's different diagnostic tools used in Chinese medicine, and Chinese medicine is one of the oldest medicines around. It's 3,500 years old. It's much older than Western medicine,
Mm,
and there's different diagnostic tools in Chinese medicine that obviously are very different than Western medicine, and it's really such a different way of looking at the body. When I was studying Chinese medicine, it was almost like I had to relearn how the body works over again. And it's because when you're used to a certain system and then you start understanding the body in a different way, it's a complete mind switch. And in Chinese medicine, the body, in Taoist philosophy, is considered a microcosm of nature, of the
mm,
universe. And so we look at chi, and chi is the energy that flows through the body, that flows through meridians.
mm,
And when you have, like, this is super simple, but if you have a blockage of chi, that a lot of times will cause pain, or it could be at the root cause of some health condition. And so, one of the ways that you can look at the constitution of somebody is by looking at their tongue. And, at a very simplistic level, like if your tongue is bright red, it means you have a lot of heat. If your tongue is super pale, usually you're blood deficient. If you have a very like thick coat on your tongue, then that's a sign of dampness. And we also look at where the coat is on the tongue. And then we
mm,
look at the bottom, this area. And if those veins are super blue and purple, that's a sign of liver chi stagnation. So there's lots of, and then if
mm.
the sides of your tongue have scallops like puffy with teeth marks, that's a sign of spleen chi deficiency, which you probably don't know what that means. But anyway, so that's just one, that's one way that we can kind of see like what's going on inside the body.
Yeah, I mean, I bet everybody right now is looking at their mirror in a tongue because it is interesting. It kind of made everybody a little bit self-conscious. It was led by me. It wasn't led by
Yeah.
you. I was like, "What do you think about my tongue?" And then
Yeah.
everyone was like showing their tongue, and they were a little bit like, "Oh my gosh, what if, what if she tells me I have chronic bad breath or something terrible?" So let's just say you find a little spleen issue, or you see something in the tongue that could point to a spleen issue.
Mhm.
Would you then acupuncture around the spleen? Is that something that you would do? I'm a novice, so please tell me.
Yeah. No, not necessarily. So then we also will feel your pulses,
Mm,
and that's another diagnostic tool. So the pulses obviously have different qualities and give us more insight into how your body specifically is working. And so, for example, if somebody has like the puffy tongue with scallops, and then we feel the pulse, and the pulse has, like, we call it a slippery um sensation, then those two things correlate with like a spleen chi deficiency. So spleen chi deficiency in Chinese medicine is not the same as looking at your spleen in Western medicine. So in Western medicine, your spleen is important for your immune system. In Chinese medicine, your spleen and stomach are paired organs that really relate to your digestive system. and
Mm.
they work together. And so, for example, if you're somebody who's like a worrier, if you're always like constantly in your mind and like worrying about everything, like, oh my God, what am I going to do if this happens? And, it's like a on repeat, it tends to deplete the spleen energy. And so you might
Mm.
end up with things like bloating or poor digestion or acid reflux or burping or things like that.
Mm.
And what we do is, we'll work on your diet because there's certain things that the spleen really hates, like ice cream and tofu and things that are more like heavy and cold. And then
Mm.
there's certain points that we do that are along the spleen and stomach channel. But that's so those meridians, run through your body and aren't necessarily, it's not like you go to the spleen, but you go to the meridian that's associated with the spleen or stomach. And then we can do points to like one other really cool part about Chinese medicine is the balance between yin and yang, which is like the balance between hot and cold, dark and light. Um,
Yes.
and it's the same, and I love that philosophy because it's really about living in harmony with nature, right? If our bodies are microcosms of the universe, it's how do we live in a balance? How do we live in harmony with nature, with like the sun and the moon and that kind of,
Mm.
not to get too esoteric, but
Yeah.
it really is that. Like, so when you have too much, when you have spleen Qi deficiency, you'll have dampness in your body, for example. And then we could do acupuncture points to help drain that dampness, and
Mm.
open that meridian that might be clogged. Whereas sometimes we have points that we want to tonify the energy or give energy to. And then
Mm.
other times we have points that we want to move the energy in a different way.
Yes. Now
That makes
I have a few concepts that I need to understand first.
Yeah.
The cold thing, ice cream, tofu, meaning when you digest them cold, like when they are temperature wise cold,
Yeah.
that's affecting your body.
Yeah. So in Chinese medicine, every food, and this is the thing I absolutely love about Chinese medicine, every food has a taste, a temperature, an associated meridian, and a medicinal quality.
Mm.
So it's just like the materia medica, of Chinese herbs and how, so you might look at, so like if I was going to look at you and I was like, oh, let's just keep it super simple. Like you have a fever. So I'm going to give you herbs that tend to be cooling, right? To
Mm.
cool the fever. I mean, sometimes we do give warmer herbs so you sweat, like when you first get sick, but it's
Right.
that balance of the taste and the temperature. So because the spleen hates cold, so if you want to like balance that out, you want to eat foods that are more warming. So tofu in Chinese medicine tends to be damp and cold.
Mm.
It's one of the worst things you can eat if you have spleen Qi deficiency. Same with ice cream, like cold dairy. Those two things are the, perfect example of what your spleen doesn't like. What your spleen does
Right.
like is warm soups, things that are easy to digest, like
Yes.
congee or, things like that.
And then what about dampness? Could you explain that to me? What does dampness mean to you? Because it like
Yeah.
fluidy, like I don't understand.
Yeah. Um, So if you think of dampness, think of the environment, right? Since we're microcosms of the universe,
Mm.
dampness is related to moisture. And when you think of the body, blood is, and which is yin. So fluids in the body are yin and movement in the body is yang. And so when you put those two things together, you want your blood to be, your circulation to be good through the meridians, and you
Mm.
need your chi, your energy to get everything to flow.
Mm.
Then if you have a damp stagnation, it blocks that energy from flowing freely. So if you look at the environment, let's say your house has a leak and water's leaking and it's in your walls and it's not draining through, what happens? Mold starts growing, right?
Right.
So you can think of that. That is the result of water not moving through that creates dampness.
Mm.
It's kind of like that. Does
Yeah.
that make
So
sense?
it's a kind of a stuck energy.
Yeah.
Like the energy isn't flowing through properly. Maybe your
Yeah.
blood isn't flowing the
Yeah.
way that it should be.
Yeah. It's thick, it's heavy,
Yeah.
it's like cloying, it's very it's clogging. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. So if somebody comes to you with a damp thing, like what's the move? We're gonna got to move this around. We need circulation.
Yeah, we're going to do some acupuncture points to
Mhm.
drain damp. So we're
Mm,
going to do some acupuncture. And then if we're doing herbal therapy, we're going to give you an herbal formula that helps to support your spleen and stomach and drain dampness. And
yes.
it depends on the person and the person's constitution. And there's lots of other aspects that we look at. We're looking at the whole picture. So if this is the main part of the picture, we're going to drain dampness. And then we're going to talk about diet, and we're going to say, these are the foods, like if you're eating nuts and seeds, like eat those, are pretty damp producing. So maybe just
Mm,
eat little bits of those. Eat foods that are warming, like ginger. Ginger is really great for drying damp and supporting the spleen and stomach. And
mm,
movement, like moving your body, is super important because that gets the waterways flowing.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
great.
yeah,
It's such it makes sense to me. And just to clarify, this is ancient, right? Like
yeah,
we're talking about the Chinese medicine would be like thousands and thousands of years old, as in every food is accounted for and has a medicinal purpose and is bad for certain areas or better for certain other areas, right?
yes. It's 3,500 years old. I mean, and think about
Wow.
Western medicine is hundreds of years old.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, and if it's really interesting, if you go to China, it's still a very, very important and large part of their medical system there.
Yeah.
And it's
That's
such
amazing.
good medicine, Luke. So you've never had acupuncture, or have you?
I had it once when I put my back out, and I just like was like, oh, may as well give it a go, and I went and gave it a go. I found it to be quite effective and relieving, but I never have thought about it really ever since. Yeah, I'm sure what you're saying really makes a lot of sense to me because I was thinking yesterday, I was like, I'm out of balance. I'm always pushing for energy and I'm never relaxing. Like I'm always going, 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 and never
Yeah,
like, okay, just we need to take an hour where we
yeah,
listen to some calm music and we off, we
yeah,
switch off the productivity or like the constant productivity.
yeah.
um I mean, I guess I'm in a certain time in my life where I need to be producing, where I'm kind of like I'm sick of, like, I look back on so many years where I haven't produced as much as I do now, so I'm kind of looking to make up for all that. And I'm excited by what I'm doing, but I do see that I'm imbalanced. And
Hmm.
what you're talking about is realizing that within ourselves. I'm sure a lot of people listening are feeling that way too, or the opposite, or
Well, yeah, I
but
love what you're saying because you have this great energy and you're so funny and you have a lot to give, and all of that is very yang because you're
mm,
doing, when you're doing, it's yang. And so that's so great because right, that's your passion, and it makes you happy when you're doing it, and you could see that. And then to
hmm
balance that, it's just taking time, even if it's just when you're going to sleep, to go in and just like, connect to your inner self and just take that time to be like, all right, it's like, could be a meditation or just feeling your body, taking the time to just like really connect,
mm,
and feel. And for some people, I mean, it might sound silly, but it's literally, it's just like stroking your arm or something. It's like connecting and like touching your own body,
mm.
and just connecting to the inner aspect, the yin, the softness, and the other part, the yin part, the softer, not as active part of ourselves. It's like the moon versus the sun. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes. I can see why perhaps my meditation that I do sometimes, it's called NSDR, Yoga Nidra. It's about like it's a
Mhm.
kind of like a body scan. It's really like
Yeah,
going through
yeah,
each part of the body and being with it and seeing
yes.
where it's at, feeling it with warm light. That kind of reminds me of this. It's like
That's
bringing
right.
your
Yeah,
mind to your body and being with yourself and not trying to do anything. You're just being
yes,
with you.
yes. I love that. That's the perfect balance for your yang energy.
So tell me about yourself. Like, how do you come back into yin? Like what, because you're a founder of a
Yeah,
company and you're a
yeah,
mom, you're a busy person. So
yes.
how do you find time and how do you do it? What's your go-tos?
Well, honestly, I kind of had to learn the hard way because I had, my acupuncture practice and then started Urban Remedy. and had so much opportunity in front of me. And my company grew so fast. And I was CEO at that point, and I had just had, I had a baby. And so for years, I would say for like 8 years, I was in very much a yang cycle and really
Right.
so busy. And my kid wasn't sleeping, and I had to wake up and go to these meetings and travel and do all these things. And I got to a point during COVID where like my body just kind of shut down. I lost 20 pounds. And I was because I was not listening to myself. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't listening to my body. And it was such a good reminder it was a good reminder of like everything that I know and practice, but I wasn't implementing in my own life.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just what I was just sharing with you. It was really about reconnecting with myself and taking the time to just be alone and feel my emotions. And because I think a lot of us that get a lot of things done and, find success in a certain way tend to be doers and or caretakers, which means we're always doing for other people and taking care of people. And sometimes it's more difficult to focus on ourselves. And so
Mm.
that's really how I kind of got back into the way I healed myself. I had, I literally lost over 20 pounds, and
Mm.
I couldn't gain weight back for my stress. And I tried everything. I was doing acupuncture, I was doing homeopathy, I was doing like everything you could think of, and nothing was working for me. And the thing that worked was getting back into living in harmony with nature, meaning like sitting and getting sun in the morning, going to sleep
Mm.
early, like just being with myself. And the doing for me was just making it worse. The trying too hard because when you get in your mind and you get almost mad at your body, and that happens with illness too. It's like, what is wrong with me? Like, why don't I feel good? Why am I having this? I don't want this. What can I do? Who can help me? What supplement can I take? What healer can I see? And everything is
Yes.
outside of ourselves. So it's like really coming back and remembering that our bodies are healing machines. And I think that's like one of the biggest things that most of us are separated from, is really remembering that our bodies know how to heal and they know what to do if we just give them the space to do it. Then that's where true healing happens. And so anyways, that was my experience during COVID, and so that's how I really got back into balance from that situation.
Yeah, it sounds like, we're not human doers, we're human beings.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we're people who are
yeah,
always doing, like you just mentioned, people who are successful are always going and
yeah,
doing. And sometimes it's like, well, it's time to be. It's time
yeah,
to not think of all these activities. So, and then when you're sick or you're unwell, you're like, well, what have I got to do? Which was
exactly.
all the doing puts you in this unhealthy state.
Yeah,
All you think of all the things you can do rather than just being, which is, not an easy practice. I'd say that actually would take a lot of self-reflection and kindness.
yes, yes,
That wouldn't be easy. So how
yeah.
did you do it as a CEO, as a busy person though? Because most people would listen to this and go, oh, okay, so she just was sitting out in nature and being. Did you have to tell people to F off? Like,
Yeah,
can I just have some time? Yeah,
yes.
how did you do that?
Because I was in a place before COVID where I was doing every single thing. Excuse me, I was, working at my company, and then I was doing a lot of speaking engagements, and I didn't say no to anything. And then I would go
Mm.
and I would just all of a sudden I was like, oh, I just don't feel good. Or, I would inside I would be having tons of anxiety, but I would be sitting on a stage in front of people talking about organic or food is healing or whatever it is. And so
Yep.
that's where the imbalance was, because I was talking about it, but I wasn't incorporating kind of those principles into my life. And so, yeah, I had to like take a break and say, hey, I need, I could be at this meeting or do this, but I need to slow down. And I took some time off and I moved out to a property out in nature
Mm.
and just really changed. Like I started saying no to everything.
Ah,
I
good to
started saying
know.
no to everything and just and then I started just kind of listening to myself more, and just instead of immediately saying yes to something, it was like, all right, well, is that really a yes for me, or is it a no? And just kind of getting back into my intuition and just kind of following whatever that was. And it's been so
Mm.
fun. I mean, I've now I'm kind of now I'm like excited. I feel so much better after that. And so now I'm excited to, I'm delving back into where I was, and you go through ebbs and flows in your life, and it's okay to go through those like dark night of the souls, because that's where you learn about healing and yourself and having compassion for other people that are going through difficult situations. And it's
Yeah.
always I think like in a lot of people's struggles with health is where a lot of our biggest life lessons come in.
Yeah, absolutely. And taking it, learning to take it easy on yourself or learning not to go and do. I think that's a huge lesson. If you're a doer, like it's like you have to have the balance of being
Yeah.
um in the forefront of your mind. And I need that right now. So let's talk about no, quickly got to ask about acupuncture because everybody out there who has never done it before is thinking, I don't like needles. What do you
Yeah.
say to that?
I don't like needles either. I don't like getting shots, but
Okay.
acupuncture needles are really like the size of a hair. There's nothing inside of them. They're not hollow needles. And, you
Mm,
could bend it on your finger, and they're very, very small. And there's different styles, like traditional Chinese medicine, which I was trained in, is, we want to kind of catch the chi when you put the needle into the point. And sometimes you can have a little sensation, but I started practicing more Japanese style, and that's very pain. It's pretty pain free. I'm very, very gentle. And so you put the needles in, and most people are like, oh my God, I don't even feel it. And it's just such great medicine. I mean,
yeah.
it's such good medicine, and it's really not painful. Most people will do it and then they're like, oh my God, I feel so good. And some people actually get a high off of it because it really can stimulate your endorphins. And so
Mm.
you can leave treatment sometimes feeling like, oh my God, like you're on top of the world.
And how far deep does I'm just going to stay on it, the needles.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know it's not really a needle. How deep does it go in? Like, where are you aiming for?
Yeah, it depends. So if somebody has sciatica and we're putting a needle in your bum, the needle will be
Mm,
longer than if we're putting it in your face. If we're doing like
right,
this point right here on the top of your head, the needle is like super thin. I mean, super
right.
short.
Yeah.
And if you're going into like an area that's more meaty, then it will be a little bit deeper.
And you're aiming to like, so for instance, with sciatica, you'd aim for the muscle.
We don't look at it like as you're aiming for the muscle.
Okay.
There's a point there,
Mm,
um, on the gallbladder meridian, and the point, is in the gluteus, but it's a very specific point there that you could feel.
okay.
Like if I showed you, like with all the acupuncture points, it's really interesting because when you feel, when you're feeling for the points, there's usually like a really, when you feel through the meridian, there's like a hole or an indentation kind of in that area that you can actually
Right.
feel, which is really
Mm.
cool. And usually when you press a point and it's very sore, that's a sign that the energy is stuck. And so a lot of times once you put the needle in, it releases all that stuck energy, which reduces the pain syndrome if you're treating something like pain.
Painful. Yeah. So meridians would be like large nerves. Like, are you following veins or am I off here?
I mean, that's kind of how you can visualize it, but the meridians aren't associated with the circulatory system. So it's not associated with veins, but we obviously
Mm,
need to know, where the veins are, because you obviously don't want to put a needle into the vein. But it looks like that. It looks like a highway, like going through your body, and some will, like the stomach meridian, and it goes down and you go down, and then it goes all the way down to the foot.
mm,
And it's like a line that you could think of like a vein, but it's more of an energy pathway.
got it. Now you mentioned before Tao or Dao, I think it's pronounced Dao. Is that related to Chinese medicine? Dao is Chinese medicine?
Yeah, I mean that's where it is related to, and there's traditional Chinese medicine, there's
Hmm.
different, and then there's like herbalism, which I studied as well. And
Hmm.
but yes, it's based in the thinking that our human bodies are a microcosm of the universe. And so when you think of the energy meridians, think of like looking at a map, and some parts of the map have mountains, and some parts have rivers flowing through them, and some parts there's a lot of trees that might need more water and dampness, and some places like the spleen, it's better if it's dry and there's not a lot of dampness. And
Hmm.
so I love that aspect because, and that's another reason I love to talk about like regenerative farming and why Urban Remedies organic is because when you look at your body in that way, that nature is us and we are nature, and then we're not taking care of our soil and our
Mm,
microbiome of the earth, and then you look at now everybody's talking about the microbiome, our microbiome, and how it's
yes.
related to our brain health and our gut health and all of that. There's such a huge association there, and if
Yeah.
you're eating food that's grown in dead soil, compared to food that's grown in organic or that's farmed regeneratively, not only are you helping to heal your body and your microbiome, but the microbiome of the earth, which is super, super important.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. The idea that we eat food that's grown on soil that is depleted, that's sad, the food that we eat that comes from that soil affects us and then can make our microbiome depleted, and sad. And
Yeah.
I mean, literally, serotonin is made in the stomach. It's made in
Yeah.
your gut. So, if you've ever wondered why you're, depressed, you can mark it back to how are you treating yourself? How are you eating?
Yeah.
How is once again, like food is medicine. Like, how is it not medicine?
Yes.
It can
Yeah.
also be poison. There are foods that are just not good for you, that are just not meant
Yes.
to be eaten, whether it be in excess or not in excess. There are things that just you shouldn't be
Yes.
eating.
Yes.
And I let's talk about organic, and because you're very passionate about it, and your company is organic, and
Yeah.
and now you're into regenerative, because regenerative is, from what I understand, one step further than organic. Organic says we don't spray any bullshit on our stuff, on our food, and then or our soil. And then regenerative is how do we regrow the soil? How do we make sure that it regenerates? Is that how you would define it?
Organic's a little bit more. Don't kill me. I have to plug in my charger. Is that okay?
How fucking dare you? Yeah, come
God, no! I just saw it. I can't
on.
believe it. Okay. Sorry. Hopefully you can edit this out. Okay. Sorry, Luke.
Hello, it's fine.
Hi.
You ready?
I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'm ready. Sorry about that.
Great. No worries. Yeah, so tell me how you define regenerative versus organic.
Yeah. So I think it's important to like define the few certifications because I think
Mm.
people really get confused between non-GMO and organic as well. So organic is automatically non-GMO. So when you're buying something certified organic, it will never be grown with GMO seeds. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not sprayed with harmful pesticides and chemicals like glyphosate and all of those toxic pesticides that are used.
Yep.
So those are two of the major things. And then there is some standards in organic for animal welfare. And then also conventional farming can use sewage sludge, which a lot of people don't know, to water the crops.
Oh my
And
God.
organic, yeah, I mean, and it happens. I mean, it's a common thing. And organic does not, it prohibits the use of sewage sludge.
Mm.
So,
That's
and
good. I think that's a
organic,
good thing to prohibit.
yeah, I don't really want,
That seems fair.
yeah, yeah. And so anyways, that's the difference between organic and conventional.
Mm.
Non-GMO, a lot of people think that, oh, if it's non-GMO, it doesn't have the harmful pesticides and chemicals, but that's not true. Non-GMO just means there's no GMO seeds. So it
Okay.
uses the same tenets as conventional farming. It's just not GMO seeds.
Got it.
Um, certified. And so there's a big thing with regenerative where there are a lot of companies saying, oh, we're regenerative and kind of greenwashing regenerative. And then there's the ROC certification, which is the regenerative certification. So to be certified regenerative, you automatically have to be organic. That's the first piece of that. And then there's no harmful pesticides and chemicals. They use composting, topsoil, crop rotation. They'll use different animal grazing if that's part of their practice on their
Yep.
farm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really the highest standard in healing the soil. And the thing I also love about regenerative, it's like what we talked about. Like regenerative farming is based in living in harmony with nature and harmony with all aspects of the land that are on it. And it also has to do with the workers on the farm and
Mm,
how they're being treated. And they look at that as well. And anyway, it's very, very exciting, but also a little bit scary because, like I said, there are other people that are defining regenerative in a different way that don't think it
yeah.
has to be organic. And so it's just really important that people understand that, because we only have, around, forecasters are saying we have 60 more years. If we keep going the way we're going, and then our soil will be completely depleted. And so one of the other great things about regenerative farming is it heals the soil, and it's great for carbon sequestration. So
Right.
um, it's just a win-win, and it's really one of the only ways forward that we can heal people on the planet. And it goes back to that living in harmony with nature, right? If we can do that with our farming system, it's going to help us not be so disconnected on a lot of different levels. So it's very
Yeah.
exciting. Yeah.
Heal the soil, heal the food, heal yourself. It makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense that if we're eating food that comes from great soil that's full of nutrients, then we can then ingest those nutrients. And a huge proportion of why we have to supplement with magnesium,
Yeah.
D and B12 is because our food isn't nutritious as it once was, because of all the way we farm, monocropping, spraying all these pesticides, etc.
Yeah.
And so regenerative is kind of like it's the next step, and it's a really hot buzzword right now. I know that a lot of companies, even big ones that we would consider evil, like Nestle, like saying that they will be 50%
Yeah.
regenerative by certain times, which
Yeah.
it sounds good, but the thing about these corporations, and I will continue to call them evil, is that they lie. They
Yes.
lie. They will find ways around,
Yes.
around all this. They'll find ways to call themselves regenerative without actually being regenerative. And
Yes.
so, keep the bastards honest. That's what I say. Make sure you fucking look into
Yes.
what they're saying, and is it true? So tell me about Urban Remedy. You guys
And I
regenerative
want to
in?
just add one thing to that. If you
Yeah.
see a ROC, a regenerative ingredient, like we use lotus rice is regeneratively farmed. I think there's 55 or 60 things that are certified right now because it's a relatively new certification.
Mm.
Look for the ROC or go on their website and look at the things that they've certified. And if you see things like lotus rice or any of the other 55 or 60 ingredients that are certified regenerative, it's such a great way to vote with your dollars. And the same goes for organic. Anything that's certified organic, if you feel overwhelmed, like, I don't know, I'm worried about the soil health of the planet,
Mhm.
just buying certified organic is one way that you can help support the movement and organic farmers that are doing the good work that needs to happen.
Yeah, and are there products that, like, fruit and vegetables? Wow, that's my I. That's what my dad does. He jokes. He says vegetables in a certain way. He's vegetables, and now I do that.
That
Anyway,
is
I'm
so
becoming my
funny.
dad. Horrifying. Okay, so but are there any vegetables that we have to buy and fruits that we have to buy organic that you just think is like don't even question it?
Well, you're probably asking the wrong person because I only buy organic fruits and vegetables. Like, I personally,
Damn.
so when I see those lists that are like the dirty dozen and whatnot, I think
Yes.
that for me, it's more about that I just want to support organic, and I don't want to eat anything that's sprayed with glyphosate or harmful pesticides and chemicals, and I don't want to support that way of farming. And so for
Got
me,
it.
I just buy organic everything.
Yeah, and but what about for people who aren't the
Yeah,
founders of Urban Remedy?
yeah.
Are there just some vegetables that you just like, please just try and buy organic these ones?
Well, I think anything without appeal, you would like to buy organic. If something
Yeah.
has appeal on it, like an orange or a banana or something like that, then at least you're peeling off. But a lot of these pesticides, just so people really understand, a lot of these pesticides you cannot wash off. Like, when glyphosate is sprayed on a fruit or a vegetable, it does
Hmm.
not wash off. And
Yes.
so there's no washing it. So just, I think that's an important thing to understand. And they've been testing, umbilical cords of babies and finding tons of these pesticides and chemicals.
Yeah.
And so it gets passed from mother to child. And so it's really, in my opinion, it's one of the other reasons that people are chronically ill is, eating this food that actually really hurts your microbiome that has glyphosate on it. And so I always think of it as like, it's part of your medicine, eating clean and not eating things that have chemicals that are going to poke little holes in your gut and things like that, like
Yeah.
GMO corn and stuff.
Totally. When you get into the glyphosate and the way that if it's sprayed in one farm, it even can get
Yes.
winded over to another. It's quite a depressing thing to start
Yes.
talking about. If you ever look up Zachary Bush, MD, he talks a
Yes.
lot about this, and it's
I
super
love him.
sad. He's
Yeah.
great, but I would add to that, like, berries and things like of that nature.
Yes.
Do not eat them not organic.
No.
I think they are holding factors for all of that
Yes.
glyphosate. Brown rice, we hear about how brown rice has that husk. Definitely, I would venture away from brown. I'd eat white rice, and I'd eat organic white rice if I can get it,
Yes.
and it's not that expensive.
Yes.
And I'm cool with eating avocado. I know you're going to get angry at me. I'm
No,
cool with
no.
eating
I mean,
avocados that aren't that are organic.
yeah.
I'm cool with eating oranges and grapefruit that aren't organic too.
Yeah.
Bananas, I kind of just venture into what one looks riper and readier for me.
Right.
That's just how I do that. But yes, I think like the peels seems to make sense. And if you have enough
Yeah.
money to go fully organic for everything, then you may as well just do it.
But I would also just add, like, if you go to Costco, they have so much organic for such a great price
Mm,
that it's the same price most of the time as conventional. So there are so many, like, organic is not as expensive as everybody thinks if you go to a Costco. A lot of times when I'm at the grocery store, I'll look at organic apple next to a non-organic apple, and it's really just like a
mhm.
couple cents difference in price. So it's not like
Yes.
$5 more a pound or anything like that.
Right, and it supports agriculture that's responsible, and it supports your gut microbiome better,
Yes.
and it's higher in nutrients. So it
Yes.
seems like fairly no brainer, but
Yeah.
different budgets, different people. I totally
Yes.
get it. But
Totally.
Costco seems
Yeah.
to be the way, baby. People keep telling me about Costco. Maybe I need to go on and spend that 75 and get a membership.
Yes. Yes. Especially if you want to eat organic, Costco's a place to go. They have everything organic. They have organic everything. It's incredible. So, yes, it's a place to go if you want organic and you don't want to go shop at like Erewhon or something.
Yes. So, I mean, you've created this very successful business out of fresh food. That is, I mean, there are salads that I got delivered a couple of weeks ago and a couple of weeks ago before that. I'm just like, how does a person do a business like this? How do you get fresh salads out to people in such a way
Yeah.
that must be a difficult thing to do?
It really is. I mean, cracking the code on fresh, nobody's really been able to do it, right? So, and that's
Hmm.
it goes with the story that we were talking about before. It's like, when you're making food that is really cheap to make, so like think of like cookies and whatnot made with like GMO corn and wheat that has GMO sugar, and then it has the seed oils, like that's very cheap food. And it makes a lot of sense for the people making it because it's not expensive. It has a very long shelf life. And when
Hmm.
you have a long shelf life, you don't have to worry about purge. When you're making fresh food with a short shelf life, and there's a saying, good food goes bad.
Right.
It's very difficult. And so, I'm very, very proud of our fresh and that we can ship to people like you and that we could sell fresh in Whole Foods and different markets and offer, certified organic, yummy, fresh meals. But it's really not easy. That part of the business is probably the most difficult because if you get your forecasting wrong or if something's not put out on the shelf in time, then it's going to go bad and then you have to throw it away. And the cost of making that food is a little bit more expensive too, so it's terrible to have to purge. So it's a real balancing act. And but it's something that everybody at Urban Remedy is super passionate about, cracking the code and being able to offer really healing food to people, but it's not
Yeah,
easy.
I've realized in the last few years that I have my mother's frugalness. Tight ass is a word, is a phrase that I would use sometimes on myself. I just hate throwing out food. I just really upsets
Yes.
me.
I do
and
too.
it must upset you when you guys have to throw out things.
Oh, it makes me physically, I hate it. But we, like in our stores, we have stores up here in NorCal.
Hmm.
When the food is going to expire, we donate it to shelters and whatnot. We never throw it away.
Oh, that's great. That's
So,
great to hear.
yeah. But still, the goal is really to, try to find that balance. And I mean, I think we're just getting closer to that. But it has been difficult. But then we have other things that kind of offset, like our bars and all of our juices and our drinks and all of that stuff.
Mm,
So
right.
we have some stuff with like a 7-day shelf life, and then we have some things that have like our cookies that will have like a couple months shelf life.
Yeah, shout out to the cookies. I think they're the best cookies I've ever
Thank
had.
you. Yeah, I
Off a
like them
shelf,
too.
I mean, literally like so good. I remember when I first started eating them, I was like, I don't know if I can afford these. But they're fucking good. You've dropped the
Yeah.
price on them.
But they're really not that expensive. I think for a bag, they're like under $3, right? Or they're maybe 3.50. I can't remember how much they're sold like at a Whole
But
Foods.
you did drop the price on them.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Because we had the big cookies and those were more
Yeah, yeah,
expensive.
yeah.
And then we went to the little minis, and yes, there's
Okay.
a big price difference. Yes. And
Appreciated
that's been a
because
goal. Yeah.
that's good. Yeah, try and make it more accessible for people. Like we all need to be
Yes.
eating this stuff, and those cookies, like me and I bought them first, and Cara ate them. We both ate them, but Cara then kept buying them, and I was like, this isn't a weekly thing. We can't afford these Urban Remedy cookies every week. You have to relax. And now with the little smaller ones, they're more
Yeah.
accessible for us.
Yes. Oh, good. Yes. And that
See,
was
that's my
really the goal.
frugalness.
No, I mean I feel the same way, and I'm really working on trying to lower the price of all of our products.
Hmm.
But having the like everything we use is organic, so it's a little bit more expensive. And not using things like in all of our salads, we use olive oil, as the base. We don't use any canola or
Nice.
whatever. So you can imagine there's a price difference there. So
Yeah,
um yes, but yes, making our food more accessible is one of our highest priorities for people.
I love that. Nika
Yeah.
Pasquale, our time has come to an end, but what a joy. It's so nice to chat to you
Thank
for an
you.
hour. Because last time I met you, I wanted to ask you a million more questions about Chinese medicine. And so I got to do that today.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was so fun talking to you. And next time I see you, I'm going to give you an acupuncture session.
That'd be great. But quickly just tell people how we can
Yeah.
find you.
So if you're looking for Urban Remedy, you can go to urbanremedy.com, and we have a locations page. We're national throughout the East Coast, and the West Coast, and some other regions, the Rocky Mountains. And if you click locations, you can see what Whole Foods we're in, and we're at some other natural grocers like Molly Stone's, and grocery stores like that. And we have our stores, and we also ship directly to you if you order on the website.
Amazing. Can we follow you on Instagram? Like, are we allowed to do that? Or
Yeah. You could follow Urban Remedy, which is just Urban Remedy, and my
Mhm.
my Instagram is Neka_loves LOVES.
That's
Yeah.
so cute. Nika loves.
You know what? I had
Yes.
somebody that worked for me just like did it, and we were trying to think of names, and anyways, that one kind of stuck. My middle name is
Ni-
Love. I had total hippie parents, and so
oh,
it's kind of related to that.
wait. So it's Nika_loves, right?
Yeah, LOVES, loves.
Oh, cute. It could be Nika underscore
Yeah.
loves 69 XOXO.
Yeah. Maybe I should change it to that.
What a joy. Thanks for chatting with me.